COVID now, at this moment. So I had it already 2 months ago, so that went well. But it is still very, very, very present. So
yeah, we're in the same boat. We're lucky though, because we have a nice house. We live in a very nice neighborhood. We can go for walks. My neighbor across the road, he and I used to walk our dogs together, but his dog was old and died. He is now a puppy that's too young to walk, and Charlie's too old to walk. So now we're we go out together and we walk faster without the dogs. But, it's
that's good. That's good. Yeah,
it's been a good year for doing that. So we start in 3 minutes. I'm just going to go and check a couple of things before we start. So I'll be back in just 1 minute.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to do the same.
All right. See you in a minute.
Yeah. Nice to hear you, Martin. See you. I'm back.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. This is Martin Hubel, your host of the DB2 Night Show, and we've got yet another great show for you today. Christian Malero is back with us. How are you doing today, Christian?
Hey, Martin. Very, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Yes, we will go through the normal things we go through to get the show started, and then we'll turn things over to Christian. We're having an absolutely beautiful day here in Toronto. For some reason, our temperature is up around, it's going to be up around 65 degrees Fahrenheit or about 18 degrees Celsius. We're looking forward to some wonderful weather, and I'm going to get to go out and clean up the leaves in the yard again. Never gets better than that, does it? So carrying on, here's our social media page. Once again, Twitter, LinkedIn group, we don't get a lot of activity there, but if you need to tell us some, we're anxious to see you do that. And as we've been telling people for the last year, we are now on YouTube, should you decide not to download the shows onto your own device. Our disclaimer, copyright 2020 DBI, our founding sponsor of the DB2 Night Show. We're grateful for their support in being able to put this show on. And we have trademarks from various organizations, and we respect them all and we love them all. We are recording, and you'll be able to have a replay of the show. So our quick announcements, our upcoming shows. Later this month, we have Adaptive Workload Management with David Kalmick, the author of that in the IBM Toronto Lab. And the next DB2 LUW show is Machine Learning and AI with Sheikh Kader of the IBM Toronto Lab. And our next show on DB2 on Z will be Dan Luxtetich doing DB2 index performance recommendations. We always look forward to having Dan on the show. And that will be a great show, just as this one will be. As always, I just put a small plug in here for DBI. If you want to watch their demo, it's available at the following link, and it shows you how to tune DB2 LUW in minutes. And there's an awful lot of information there if you're moving towards DB2 LUW to watch that webinar. Our winner from last show was Andres Gomez of Experian. He's got himself a Amazon gift certificate just for watching the DB2 Night Show. Thanks to everyone watching the show. And our sponsors are DBI and yours truly, Martin Hubel Consulting, Inc. Now we're into the polling part of let me go in here and pull them out. Get them over here, select the poll, and we'll ask our standard first question. And seeing people vote on that. We're seeing good news here. Most people reporting that they are on. Let me I'll share that with you. You notice that our entire audience today is on version 12. I think if I had sound effects, I would make some. In fact, I probably could make some sound effects, but I have it on good authority. I took a poll, and nobody really wants to hear them. That's the joy of being able to poll. Sometimes you better just not to ask the question. Now we've got three questions that are specific to Christian's presentation today. What version of the DB2 client driver are you using today? And having people vote on that. And again, we've got enough people voted. I'll close that and share the results. And we're seeing that most of the audience is on 11.1, a few on 11.5, and some quarter of the audience is still on 10.5. And our last question of this type, let's go in here and actually, no, we've got a couple more questions. Sorry. Here is, you have a business case for zips. Zips have been around a long time. Christian, are they changing with what you're talking about with distributed today?
Yeah, indeed, they have been around for a very long time. And what happened is that we get more and more distributed access to DB2, so zips become more interesting. And also DB2 has been changing a lot since version 8, where they were introduced. So probably there are more options for exploiting them now. Excellent.
Well, yeah. And we're going to hear about that in your presentation. We look forward to seeing that. And here's the results. About 85% of the audience has said that they are using them, but they have, and the other part, of course, has not recently reviewed it, so they might learn something new today as well, and that's just great. All right, and our last question before we move along is, what's your experience with trusted contexts and roles? And this is one that the roles seem really easy, and the trusted contexts seem really hard. So I'll be interested personally to hear what you have to say in that area.
Cool.
And it's interesting watching the survey results come through. Thanks for voting quickly today, folks. We've been able to do each survey in about 30 seconds. I'll close that one off and share. And we're seeing that some people are looking at them, but most people have never used them. So this is a perfect opportunity to impart some knowledge.
Indeed. Good.
That's just great. Good. All right. With that in mind, let's move along. And I will just put up one more slide of the DBI tool set here. This is their main menu where they're showing the dashboard of how overall performance is in DB2 LUW. It gives people a good idea not only to where to look for problems, but also to help them ensure service levels. And with that, we're on to you, Christian. So let me go over here. I'm going to make you the presenter. You should have a pop-up on your screen about now.
Show my screen. Can you see my screen, maybe?
Yes, we can. You're all set. I'll be watching the question queue. As people know, we have a question. There's a question tool built in to go to webinar. I've got that up on my screen, and I'll be monitoring that, and I'll break in. But for the time being, I'll mute myself so I don't disturb anyone.
Okay, absolutely, Martin. Yes, please let me know if there is a question. It would be great that we could have a conversation on this topic that I really like.
Great.
So let's talk about distributed access to DB2, things that I think you should know. Let me move to the next slide. This is the agenda for today. So we have a little introduction. Then I'd like to discuss why remote access to DB2 and why we think that this is one of the areas of DB2 that it is done to evolve the most in the following months and years, and is the future. Then distributed configurations, so how this stuff works, how can you, in a way or another, get the same result with more or less efficient configurations. I like to discuss about security, best practices, workload management, and then we have a summary and conclusions. So I had a very hard time to reduce this presentation to the time that we have, because the topic is quite extensive, and it's a topic that I have been studying and working with already for many years, and it's something that is present us, as we just saw, many opportunities to improve. So if you have any questions or if you require more details or more material, don't hesitate to let me know. Send me an email. I'll try to do my best to come back to you as soon as possible. So this is me. I have been working with DB2 for CUAs and LUW for a very long time. This is just the traditional regular disclaimer. And then let's go for the introduction. So where are we today? So I don't want to get too much into details regarding the situation that we're living. The pandemic situation is something that more or less is touching everyone. To give you a little context, now I'm sitting in Belgium, where we have been on and off lockdown situation since March. We are at this moment suffering the effects of the second wave, and we are in a lockdown again. It means that we have to work from home. Most of the year we have been doing that, as you know. Seeing each other is very complicated. Companies are not letting you go. The government is asking us to work from home, right? So when we look a little bit this chart is not from the pandemic that we are suffering now. This is from the Spanish flu that happened in 1918 and 1919. And if we can accept, if we pretend that history repeats itself, it looks like we are actually we are suffering the same effect of the second wave as in 1918. Probably there is another wave. the third wave. So we are already preparing for that. When I say we are already preparing, it's the industry where we are is changing. And I like to really simplify the problem. I'm really allow me to do absolute abstraction of the human problem related to the pandemic, and just let's talk about the technical side, and let's talk about DB2. It's not that we don't care, just let's put that aside for a little bit. But the situation where we are, that we don't know when it's going to end, and that probably if it repeats itself, it's going to be there for a very long time, is, from a technical point of view, an acceleration to something that everyone was more or less busy with, and that is the digital transformation. So this is what I see in my area. This is what the industry is telling us. So we have been studying a lot of surveys and analysis at worldwide level, and this is a fact that I'm going to discuss with you, that from a technical point of view, we are jumping to the future, and we need to implement the digital transformation in our companies as we would have done in the next 6 to 10 years. So everything that we were planning or we were expecting to happen in 10 years is happening now, and we had 6 months to prepare. And that we can summarize that into the concept of digital transformation. This is people like to name this as an irreversible change towards digital transformation. So to give you an example, this is the result of a study on more than 2,500 companies. What is getting out from here is that, yeah, this the digital communication, because we are using more remote transactions, or because we are working from home more, is translated, as I mentioned, as a acceleration that in some cases average to 6 years. So in this particular study, the companies are now leaving what they would expect to have in the next 6 years, right? Now, for example, in my area, working remote was something that was not very popular. Some companies were preparing for that, and now de facto since March we are working from home, all of us. So evidently that put a lot of stress in the IT infrastructure, that put a lot of stress in the DB2 environment as well, and that is what I like to emphasize in the following slides. Right? What is the business impact, if we would like to make a summary of this? So the 3 fundamental business changes that were brought by the COVID-19. So there is a change in the customer behavior and needs. So now we do transactions, now we do business in another way. We cannot go to many shops. Many of the things that we are buying now is online. And that comes with unpredictable demand. That is something that we have been fighting with in distributed access to DB2 for years, and the problem now is exacerbated. So the distributed access, or opening our databases and applications to the cloud, opening our environments to online transactions, comes with this unpredictability of the workload. So it is not from the classic OLTP environment that starts at 9 and ends at 17 or 5 p.m. Now you can have workload that is happening at 1 o'clock in the morning, right? And that stress, how do we make possible to combine the OLTP with the batch workloads? It's also stress all the disaster recovery 24/7 and high availability strategy around DB2. It is becoming a lot more difficult to have an offline window. And the other important change in our industry that touch us, that touch DB2, is the huge spike in working remotely. And it is not only that now transactions, remote transactions are happening more, it's also that the people that used to be working on premises, like the DBAs, the developers, the testers, now they are all working remotely. And the way in which we connect to work is changing, right? So the problem of the unique situation that we are living is that the change is done at a very, very high speed. So we don't have a lot of time to prepare. So we don't have a lot of time to react, but it is something that is faster than us. So we have to adapt, and I'm going to propose some strategies during this presentation. So, and that put us in at the point where we start to discuss why remote access to DB2 is becoming more important than before. So we had already this tendency in our industry, this trend where we were moving from a batch-centric application landscape to a more remote environment, like what's feed application server or any other application server with portals and with web-enabled applications with Java development. And this kind of the application-related strategy is becoming more and more important in the context that we're living now. In this context, and after what we have discussed in general terms, those are what I think are the DB2 focus areas for today and for the next years. So first, the more important is the growth in the distributed transactions. We are going to see some examples and how to cope with that. But as I said, this tendency is going to be exacerbated. It comes as well with the need to focus on the security of the distributed and the remote access to DB2. The difference for me is the following. A distributed access to DB2 is the one that is done using a very well-known path that is the way in which transactions are coming from, let's say, an application server to DB2, DB2LW, DB2 Remote access to DB2 is the fact that now our teams, developers, DBAs need to connect to the DB2 remotely. And this can be, we keep our data centers, of course, and now the access is distributed because we are working from home. Another tendency that we are going to see that probably is going to increase is the utilization of cloud environments as a consequence of accelerating some trend that was already in the market, because now we have to react faster, and then we need to deploy, to deliver DB2 infrastructure faster than before. That also comes with challenges that we are going to discuss. You are getting more into a federated environment where you have to, let's say, join the DB2 data on premises, being that DB2 for COS, DB2LW, and the cloud. Workload classification and management. We're going to discuss about that, and it's becoming also important that we can essentially protect the workload that matters. So we need to refine the workload classification that we have, the workload management rules that we have, so we can prevent this flow of new transactions to take resources from the pre-existing transactions that are important for the business. I mentioned cloud and federated systems. We are going to discuss about that. One side effect as well of this tremendous fast digitalization is the fact that now we are making many documents digital. We are getting really into a paperless environment de facto, whereas the papers are now converted into PDF, for example, and DB2 has been a platform of choice in the past as well for storing this kind of documents in the database. So large volumes of data comes with a lot of challenges like housekeeping, for example. Focus as well is going to come into performance and capacity planning, DB2 autonomics and AI. That's AI is of course is one of the topics of the day, but should be looking into what are the opportunities in DB2 autonomics and AI to help you on the management of the DB2 environment. There is a lot going on over there. And another topic that I like to just very briefly mention is this concept of agile DB2. So we have to react faster to application changes and workload changes, and that means that we have to be able to provide, for example, data model changes in DB2 faster than before, eventually. So we have to start to explore techniques like DB2 database refactoring that allow us to introduce DB2 data model changes faster than before. So those are the areas that are going to keep us busy, and some of them we are going to discuss today. When it comes to distributed access to DB2, this is a concrete, clear example. So a few days ago, in a very important journal in Belgium, this study was made public, and it is talking about the huge increase on digital transactions. So since January of this year, 2020, the number of digital or contact-free payments has increased by 3 times. And today, almost 40% of all the transactions are contactless or contact-free and digital in Belgium, right? In Europe, we are talking about 50% of all the transactions are today contact-free. That is as a result of trying to avoid money in paper form. It's a way of payment that is quite popular in Europe. But as you can see, in just a few months, as a result of the context where we are, there is a huge stress on all the infrastructure behind this kind of transactions. And this is another example of where distributed access to DB2 is getting under stress. And it is also another example of a kind of a non-reversible change. I don't think that we will come back to paper money to the level of degree that we used to have in the past. This slide is also the result of another study that discusses how do we see the industry going or moving in the following months. And what you see that is cloud is again in the focus. As a result, today, most due to the business strategy requirements, not because of financial issues or because of the lower prices that we could get by going to the cloud, but mostly because the cloud promises us to give us IT infrastructure faster than more traditional ways of doing that. I'm not going to get into details. There is a lot of information in the web regarding this topic. Is DB2 cloud compatible if you want? Yes, of course. You can deploy DB2 as an engine in the cloud. You can deploy DB2 applications in the cloud. This morning we were discussing about deployments that are super fast, like Docker, for example. There are many solutions. So you can even create an on-premise cloud. You can even run solutions like Azure on-premises. You can install Azure on a server in your own data center, so you circumvent any kind of network concerns when it comes to security, and you can have your own cloud. Another tendency in the market is to re-platform, where many companies are moving applications from one platform to another one. And one option that is quite popular is to go to the cloud. We can have, as a result of these hybrid platforms, where we are getting a mix of, let's say, traditional operational environments like a mainframe running fixed transactions and your warehouse on the cloud, for example. The challenges are related to moving data around. How do we get the data, the transactional information now to the cloud? And that is de facto a distributed environment. Federation is quite important in this context. And for those that are not familiar, federation allows you to access remote data sources, remote databases, as if they were local. So, for example, from ISPF, from a mainframe 3270 screen, you can query tables that are running on the cloud, on DB2 for LUW, as if they would be local. So, putting the performance consideration aside, that allow us to combine the data in this kind of hybrid environment. And it is super interesting. It is available for DB2 for COS. It's also DB2 for LUW. We can mix cloud data sources as well. And with federation, we are not limited only to DB2. We have examples where we can query Excel data from SPUFI through federation. So it works very well. You have to keep an eye on the performance. Of course, network capacity becomes more important than before in this context. We are going to discuss the advantage of using hypersocket on Z environments, where you can reduce almost to zero the network latency. But this is something that I would invite you to explore. If you're not familiar with DB2 federation, have a look into this. It is super easy to implement and allow us to put in the same SQL different data sources. You can integrate in the same application local and distributed DB2 data sources. This is a must-know topic, very important today. Let's get into specific DRDA or distributed topics. And let's go into distributed configurations. So what is all this distributed access to DB2? And there are many ways in which we can access DB2 data. Consider DB2 for COS or DB2 for LUW. We can either access the databases directly from an application server. We can access the DB2 data through a gateway, that is Dbz Connect, for example, that you would use to isolate, if you want, the applications from your DB2 data source. You can connect non-application server applications directly to DB2 as well. You can connect DB2 to DB2 as well. You can put in the same picture federation as well. So the architecture can get really, really complex, especially when you start to integrate the cloud. Now, it's very important that you have a clear view of the how the distributed access to DB2 is implemented in your environment. So it's very important to know how the piping, how the connections are done. It's essentially to have this very clear, especially when it comes to problem determination. So problem determination happens as a need to explain why an application is not working anymore, or why we have a performance concern. If we don't know the path that an application is following till hitting the DB2 data server, it is getting really, really complex, especially now where we have spikes of applications, we have spike of workload in a way that is, as we discussed, the application access profile is evolving and changing almost every day. Now, when it comes to accessing to DB2, that is something that you need to know. When it comes to DB2 for the US, typically we have connected to DB2 using a DB2 Connect server as a gateway. That was a requirement in the past, when the protocol used by the mainframe and by the clients and drivers at DB2 for LUW was not the same. Now we use DRDA, and it's the same protocol, and there is no need for translation purposes of a DB2 Connect between an application or requester and DB2 for COS. So already, I mentioned that you can connect using an application server to DB2 for COS, but also you can connect any kind of application directly to DB2 for COS. From a pure performance point of view, this is the recommended way to connect directly to DB2 for COS. You don't have a man in the middle. When you do that, you need to start to explore ways of controlling this kind of workloads using the profile tables, for example, where you can say, I would like to limit the number of connections that a certain number of servers can have, so we avoid a kind of a deny of service problem in our DB2 for COS, right? But this is a point that is not clear, and that I discuss quite often with my customers, friends, and colleagues, is the fact that even if you remove the DB2 Connect server from the environment, you still have to pay for DB2 Connect licenses, because you are accessing from distributed world the DB2 for COS. There is a license involved. Licensing is one of the most complicated topics in the DB2 environment, I think. This is my opinion. As a result of that, in many situations, you would be overpaying for a given application, for a given configuration. You might be overpaying DB2 Connect licenses. There are several models, and it would be very interesting to review the licensing model that you are using. Ask help from IBM. Call your best friend at IBM and ask for advice. Especially when you are changing versions, you need to know that from 11.1 to 11.5, the licensing model and the DB2 version or release mode changed. So you need to review that and to get some advice from IBM. Another question that I get quite often is, if I need to upgrade my DB2 Connect, my drivers, my DB2 server, so what is the impact on the clients? So how do we do that? So how do we connect applications and DB2, and what happens when you start changing versions? So this is a very important point. So DRDA stands for Distributed Relational Database Architecture. And one of the important elements of the architecture is the handshake processing, is the fact that when an application using a DB2 client, the DB2 driver, or passing through DB2 Connect is connecting to a DB2 server, that could be DB2 for COS, DB2 for LUW, DB2 Connect. There is an initial conversation between these two parties where they are going to get into an agreement about the DRDA level that is going to be used. It means that if you have a DB2 client that is running with a DB2 client 10.5, and you have DB2 12 for COS on the mainframe, when the connection is established, the client and DB2 for COS, they are going to agree to talk at a level of DRDA that is understood by both parties. In this case, let's say the communication is going to be done at the level of the client, that is lower level. Will it work? Yes, it will work. The other way around is also true. Imagine that you have a DB2 for LUW server 10.5, and you are planning to upgrade the application servers because you go, say, to Linux Red Hat 8. Since June of this year, you can run DB2 11.5 in Red Hat 8. So why not? Let's take the opportunity to deploy the drivers, the latest version. So now I have a driver 11.5 and I have a server 10.5. Will this work? Yes, because in the communication, the driver and the DB2 are going to agree to use the DRDA level that is available in 10.5. So, will the communication work? Yes. So, what is that I am eventually missing there? Well, you're missing all the improvements done in the protocol that are available in 11.5. So the point here is, even if it is not absolutely necessary to keep up to date the drivers and the clients, it is very important to do so and to plan to do so. And you don't need to do all the changes at the same time. So you don't need to change the DB2 server and the DB2 client and driver at the same moment. So what you can do is to start to upgrade the clients in provision to someday upgrade to DB2 data server as well. So avoid technological debt. It is a unique opportunity that we have because we are using DRDA, meaning that you can take the opportunity of the upgrade of the application servers to put yourself to the latest level of driver, and you're ready for the future. And one of the problems that we are seeing in the industry in this area is that, because as we said, we have to rush, we have to deliver very quickly. Sometimes we are doing shortcuts technically, like for example, we avoid to upgrade the clients because we don't have the time, or we cannot take the time for doing that. But that is creating what is named a technological debt, meaning that because you don't have the opportunity or the resources to do the extra step now, today, to go to the latest driver or client, in the future, when the client or drivers are going to be out of support, you might need to redo the project again. So it could cost you a lot more. So even in the moments as we are now, where we need to deliver faster than before, avoid technological debt. Take the time to plan and to take the best option. Like, for example, insist again on the client and the driver. You might get a lot of performance benefits as well. Another very interesting topic is the following. This technology has been around for decades already, and it is truly becoming very popular. And it consists on running Linux on the mainframe. So they can run Linux on Z. They can create a partition in the mainframe, and you can install ZVM and create ZVM virtual machines that will run Linux, or you can install a partition level Linux image and use KVM to create virtual machines, or you can just skip virtualization completely and just have a partition where you run Linux, and inside you run whatever application Linux supports, including Dbz Connect, Db2 LUW, Oracle, many applications. So DataStage, Cognos. So what is the opportunity there? Well, if you're running a partition with Linux on Z, Linux on the mainframe, that contains, say, your WAS application server, in the same physical machine as your DB2 for COS, if they are in the same cake, you can exploit what is named hypersockets. HyperSocket is a memory-only network that allows to transfer data between with Field Application Server or Dbz Connect and Db2 for COS at network speed that has almost zero latency time. It's very, very good for performance. We could discuss about good examples of projects that succeed eliminating the network latency by doing so. It is kind of a consolidation of Linux and Db2 for COS. We had been working for more than 2 years in a huge project in the area where we consolidate about 1,000 Db2 for LUW databases in 2 servers of this kind. And we get the benefits of the performance and the license cost reduction of running Linux on Z. This is something that will be very interesting to exploit. So the fact that you can consolidate workloads on Linux on the mainframe. The latest model is the Rockover 3. It's just a Linux that is made easier to administer, that allows you to run Linux on the mainframe and get a large number of benefits, of which negligible is the one that you can reduce Db2 licensing cost related to the nominal power of each one of the CPUs. So it works very well. So you could have a look into this. It's quite interesting. For those running on data sharing, you have the opportunity to exploit what is called SYSPLEX support. SYSPLEX support is unique to data sharing environments. You have kind of a similar solution for those using pure scale. But let's focus a little bit on Db2 for COS. So it is a combination of the TCP/IP SYSPLEX Distributor, dVIPA, with Db2 for COS and Db2 SYSPLEX workload balancing functions that are a part of the Db2 client drivers and Dbz Connect, that consist on helping you in the following way. The first connection that is coming from outside is going to be done through the SYSPLEX distributor. That is going to represent with a single point of entry your Db2 data sharing environment, right? So the connection is done to the IP address of the SYSPLEX distributor, and the SYSPLEX distributor is going to send this connection request to the data sharing member that has more capacity available at this moment, because, for example, the others are busy doing work, right? And from there, the following transactions that are done between this application and the data sharing environment is going to have the execution of those queries distributed among the servers that have the more capacity. So after every commit, eventually, under certain circumstances, the queries is going to be rerouted to the server that has the most capacity for you. So it is kind of a dynamic workload balancing that makes sure that the queries get executed in a member that is first there, and that can give you the most of the performance. SYSPLEX support is not super easy to implement. Sometimes we get confused between the role of the SYSPLEX distributor versus the WLB functions provided by the clients and the drivers. But there are a number of red books that contains a detailed description of how to implement that. There are many red papers as well that describe how to do this. If you have a data sharing environment, you should be exploring these options. It's really, really powerful. A very important point is to make the distinction between the role of the SYSPLEX distributor that just balance connections and the workload balancing functions from the client and the driver that balance transactions. You have to combine both of them to get the most from data sharing and distributed access to DB2. All right, let's move to security. Security strategies. The worst strategy is not to have one. So I started saying that you have to have a clear knowledge of what is the landscape of your distributed infrastructure. Add to that, you need to train yourself, and you need to have a strategy for problem determination and for security. You need to improve the security at client level, network level, server level, and you need to create a security plan. In this context, as we were discussing at the beginning of the presentation, I really like the usage of trusted context and roles. I'm going to discuss that in a few slides. It's very powerful, and it's kind of this feature that you have to do once to realize that actually, from a technical point of view, it's not that complicated. But yeah, there are some details that are not very self-evident at the beginning. But when you have this, it's super powerful. And you will see that, especially in the context that we are living on today, this is a very valuable feature. And as usual, rationalize privilege. Do not overgrant. That becomes important because now eventually DBAs are connecting from home, and eventually, yeah, you are exposing, or you have to open your system to distributed access and distributed connections more than before. Do not put yourself in a risky situation. And you have to talk with your network colleagues, security colleagues. The security, the remote access to DB2, when it comes to security, is a multi-layer problem. So more than before, you have to integrate with those teams and make sure that end-to-end you have security implemented, right? I'm not going to stop too much here, just for the benefit of the agenda that we have today. But in the context of the DB2 for COS, it is very interesting to emphasize moving the DB2 security to RACF is one of the best ways to rationalize and to make stable the security in DB2. Now, one topic is to move the DB2 security, or who can access what, from the DB2 catalog to DB2 using RACF. That's one topic. And the other topic is to make more secure the connection between DB2 and DB2. So in this context, using RACF PASSTICKETS, you have the opportunity to secure the communication between DB2 for COS and DB2 for COS. So just have more material if you need. I can share with you. That is not a problem, with a lot of pleasure. But make sure that you are securing the access between DB2 and DB2 using RACF PASSTICKETS if you have not done that yet. That's there we have a good tool in the security aspect. Now, what is this about trusted context and roles, and how they work together, and what are the benefits? So I have 3 slides that describe into details this topic, but I'd like to describe you the following scenario. So if we start from the basics, you can grant access to a role in DB2. So imagine a role like a function in your company. A role could be DBA administrator, could be application developer, could be business manager. So imagine a role and start to grant access to the role. For example, DBA. So you can grant to the role all the access that are required in order to execute the role of DBA. Not through a group, it's not the same. not single people. Just you could facilitate or simplify the security landscape by giving authorities 2 roles. Then what you do is to grant the role to a person, to a DBA. So now Christian is going to be a DBA. So I don't have to find out what I need to grant to Christian. Just I granted the role. So immediately Christian has what is needed to be a DBA. So that is the approach of using roles. So we use roles a lot. It makes our life easier, especially when people is moving from team to team. Just we change the roles that they have, and that's it. So, and you can use roles out of the context of a trusted context. So just as a normal approach. What is a trusted context? Well, a trusted context means that I'm connected to DB2, COS, or LUW in the conditions, under some conditions that make this working environment instance trusted. I'm establishing a trusted connection, and because I'm establishing a trusted connection, then I get a trusted context. It means that, to simplify that, if I am connecting from the IP address from my laptop that is known by the system with my user ID and password, I can define a DB2 object that is a trusted context that is going to check that if this user ID is connecting from this IP address, for example, then the connection is a trusted connection, and then I am working in a trusted context. As a consequence, I can get in the same operation the role database administrator. Imagine that I'm connecting from Cyber Coffee from an IP that is not known by my system with the same user ID and the same password. I will connect to DB2, but I'm not going to be creating a trusted connection because the IP address is not the one that DB2 is expecting. Therefore, I don't get the role database administrator. And there are many scenarios like that. You can put on, off all this mechanic construction. You can say, for example, okay, you will be able to become a database administrator only during this weekend because you need to do some stuff and not the rest of the time. So it is quite powerful, and it is the combination of a security strategy based on using roles and defining trusted context. All of them are DB2 objects. All of them work for DB2 LUW and DB2 for COS. So we use these in scenarios where we want to make sure that in situations where we know that developers are sharing technical user ID and passwords, we limit the access and the level of authorities that they do have only when they are connecting from a specific area of the company. All this is also compatible if you are using the DB2 security in RACF, even if those are DB2 objects. Okay, and as you can see here, by using SQL, we can manipulate and we can create those objects. So it's quite accessible, and it applies to DB2 for COS and to DB2 for LUW. I'd like to share with you some best practices. So upgrade the DB2 clients, drivers, and DB2 Connect. We discussed about that. Yeah, it works if you don't have the latest version, but for performance and reliability, do it. That's great. Review and optimize DB2 Connect licenses. We have saved important amount of money in some projects because just reviewing the DB2 Connect licenses. End-to-end monitoring, I mentioned that, and keep a performance warehouse. see what are the metrics that you can collect for DB2 LOW and DB2 for COS, and keep that in a place where you can query the information very, very easily so that you can map the evolution of the workload. Verify and update your DRDA specific parameters. I'm going to mention that in a few slides. It's very important for DB2 for COS users. I have a list of topics that I mentioned already, especially in the data sharing area, and some that I'm going to discuss later on. We discussed the zip engines at the beginning of the day, and if you have a business case, you should be reviewing it. During the latest version of DB2, more and more gets zip eligible if you have a zip and if the zip is not too busy. So if you have a business case, you should review it and see what from DB2 you can offload to a zip. What is a zip? A zip is a processor that is there to execute some DB2 workload and has the advantage that the CPU used or the queries executed on a zip are not counting for the 4 hours or in average. So it's an indirect way of reducing the mainframe cost. So they should be looking into that side. Enforce application development guidelines and best practices. So create a little Bible with the rules. If you have 7 rules, put them on paper and communicate them. It doesn't matter. These 7 rules will become 20 after a while, but have guidelines. Try to enforce the some kind of filter. If the best practices are not applied, stop the application as soon as possible. Things like select everything. We know it's not a good practice to try to enforce and avoid this kind of utilization. I know this becomes more and more complicated when people are using for developing the man in the middle, like Hibernate, for example. But nevertheless, you have to create and enforce a number of rules in order to keep control on the, especially the performance of the environment. I mentioned already in the interest of using trusted contexts and roles. I'm going to come on that several times. It's very important, very interesting as a feature. For those that are running DB2 for COS, use inactive threads, and you can check what are you using in display DDF. I'm going to show you an example. So where cmstat is equal inactive. It means that when a dpad, that is a little box that is needed inside DB2 to execute a distributed query, is not used anymore, this little box can go to a pool and can be reused by another application. It means that you can leverage and scale up the memory, for example, of DB2 in a very important way. And also you need this kind of construction just that the SYSPLEX support that I mentioned before can work. So eventually what you do is you detach a query from this little box, and at next execution, you can use this little box from another server eventually. So many things around distributed access to DB2 require or need or promote the use of inactive threads. Very important. If you execute this DDF command, you will get a lot of information. So I truly advise those working with DB2 for COS to get familiar with this command. We can see here that dt equal I means that we are using inactive thread. That's fine. But I don't have the time to describe all those parameters here, but it is very important and that you know how they work. And we can see from here if we have bottleneck issues where, for example, we are getting to the limit of our max dbad. It means that we had queries that were queued because the dbats were not available. Another very interesting point is the exploitation of the high-performance dbat. This is applicable to DB2 for COS. The concept is the following. I just mentioned that it's very important that we can get rid of a dbat when we do a commit, so the dbat can go to the pool, right? Now, what would happen if the queries that we're executing are very short, and we need a huge throughput, and we want the max of the performance? Maybe what we could do is to prevent this deallocation of the dbats, and to tell the transaction to keep it, and avoid the time and CPU that is needed in order to deallocate the dbat and to allocate it again. So if you have a lot of transactions that are doing a lot of very short queries followed by commit, using high-performance dbats can save you a lot of CPU that would result in 4 hours rolling average lowering, or you can see performance improvement. But it is only important if the incremental value of this allocate, deallocate is visible in the context of the full query. So you have to test this. It works very well. And many of the limitations that were introduced in DB210 are already gone. So if you were looking into this a few releases ago, you should have a look again. And we have documented in several redbooks how to implement high-performance dbat in a gradual way. So what you can do is to limit some applications to the high-performance dbat and measure what is the impact. So how to do that? One way is to create a new collection where you rebind the packages related to the distributed access to DB2, can release deallocate, you change a DDF parameter, and then you can deactivate this in a controlled way. It works very well. Workload management, protecting the work that matter. We can do workload management in DB2 for LUW, but talking specifically here to DB2 for COS advantages. So what you can do is at client level, you can set a number of registers that are the WLM client information registers that can identify what part of the application is the one behind this transaction. You can set, for example, the end user ID, end user workstation name, or accounting data, for example, and this information is going to be attached, if you want, to the transaction, and it's going to follow the path from the application to the DB2 for COS. And this information is going to be shown by DB2 in messages, as you can see in this example, and it's going to be stored by DB2 in the DB2 accounting data, for example. That allows us to chase later, for example, which part of the application is the one that is contributing the most to the CPU utilization, for example. So have a look into these WLM client information fields. They are very powerful. You can enable them or put the values in different ways depending on the application environment or the characteristics of the application. You can set them statically, for example, at the ODBC provider level definition, for example, or you can use the WLM set client info store procedure that it is very cheap, very quick to execute, that can be used for setting this information. It's very interesting. It is not only useful for identifying the workload, but it is really interesting because you can use this information in order to exploit the WLM classification rules in DB2 for COS and to attach certain transactions to different service classes. So, and that allows to to do stuff like the one that I'm showing in this example. This is a before-after example. You can see in light blue the CPU utilization as generated by a business intelligence query. In the before scenario, the WLM service class that was assigned to this workload was quite important, and it was monopolizing the CPU to the expense of the other workloads. In the after scenario, we reclassified this workload using the technique that I just described in a way that the service class now is has less priority than the rest of the workload, meaning that even if the business intelligence queries, they will be executed, they will take longer, and they will not monopolize the CPU, saving the other workload of having problems. So your before-after scenario would be the one that you need, and all this is done by combining the WLM client information and the WLM classification rules. So that allows me to emphasize a point that is super important. You need to review the classification rules for distributed environments. As I said, we are going to have more and more distributed access, and it is not always the case when the WLM guys, they get informed that there is a new distributed application now, and that we have to create a new classification rule so that we can assign a specific service class for this workload. That's super important. So they can use the classification rules to classify all the arriving distributed access to DB2, and that can be done to exploit different service classes to classify workloads with different priorities, and also it can be used to classify the workload in different reporting classes. It means that you can create CPU utilization reports at the level of the individual transaction if you want. Have a look into the difference between service class and reporting classes. So those are WLM specifics for DB2 for COS. Another very important point is that if you do not implement a specific service class for DDF, the default service class is sysorder that has a discretionary goal. A discretionary goal is the lowest priority service class that you can have in a COS environment. The problem here is the following. If you have situations where you have CPU in excess, you have an excess of capacity to have a lot of CPU, this might not be a problem. The problem is going to be very visible when the machine gets under stress and where the WLM priorities start to play a more important role. So it's very important to not to use the sysorder default service class. That's point number one. Point number two, even if you are not using sysorder and you are using the same by default service class, everything is going to the same bucket. So often you should be checking what is the workload that is coming into my system and how to classify them. Keep it simple, but at least you should be able to isolate the very critical transactions for those that are not that important. So coming back to this SYSPLEX support concept, what's happening is now that we have seen an end-to-end image of the infrastructure is that we are getting to a point where WLM is checking to the health of each one of the machines in your DB2 for the data sharing environment, and is constructing what is named server list. This server list, you can see when you do display DDF show detail, and you can see how this information about the health of the server is given back to the client. And it's based on that the client would decide where to send the next query in order to get the best benefits of the SYSPLEX environment. So give it a try. It is quite interesting to see how the weights change depending on the workload in the machine. and try to keep myself on time. I think that we are doing more or less okay, because we get into the summary and the conclusions part, where I like to discuss some key takeaways. So there is more that you must know. There are many other topics that you should have a look. This is a little list. I'm making a little bit of stress on the point that the automatic client reroute and workload balancing characteristics of the client needs some tuning to get it work. Store procedures is the way to go when you are promoting the execution of distributed applications. So whenever you can, try to have a store procedure to exchange or replace a number of queries by the execution of a store procedure. Is in general more performant, and you can control security better. Auto commit implications. So beware when you change the driver version, because one of the changes that are introduced when you move up in the client and driver level is more situations where auto commit is going to happen. That might have a little change on the application behavior. You have to have a look into that. Get used to trace distributed applications, and especially client level. Those are documented very well, and that can give you a huge amount of information if you get yourself to know how to trace a client. Then you have the combination of client level and server level traces, and you have a fuller picture of what is going on. Profile tables are super interesting. They are designed to replace some functionality from Dbz Connect, so that allows you to say, as I mentioned, for example, from this particular server, I'm not going to accept more than 10 concurrent connections, so they can protect the other connections, so that there is no kind of denied of service issue. And very important, again, from my point of view, is that you invest time on testing and playing around with trusted context and roles. This was the agenda of today. So we had an introduction. We discussed why remote access to DB2. We discussed distributed configurations, security, and best practice topics. We discussed about workload management. And then we are here now in the summary and conclusions. So key messages. So we are in an environment and a context where the digital transformation is accelerated, and the changes, many of the changes are not reversible. Do not fail to adapt. Look at how the context and how the change on the application workload profile is changing, and look at how you can better adapt to support more and more distributed access to DB2. Focus on areas that are going to be impacted when you have unpredictable workload, high volumes, and a huge number of transactions versus traditional batch processing. So look into invest time on the performance for distributed access, improve the security, and work on capacity planning so that you can scale up or scale out efficiently in the next future. And after all this, of course, you have to focus as well in the human factor, and please keep healthy. On that, I thank you very much for your time, and this is what I had to discuss with you today.
Just like that, you're all about done.
On time, I think, right?
Yes, and we only got one, not a question, but a comment in from my good friend Locke, who says it's a lot of dense information and well presented, as always. Christian, we expect nothing less from you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very appreciated.
Okay, now what I'll do is I'll take back over control to be able to end the show here and ask our very important final question, which is, did you learn anything today? We always like to see that people learn something from our show, and people have voted. I'm going to close this off because it's the answer we like to see, and it's not going to change anyway. Everybody learns something. That's fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah.
We've seen that from you before, but I mean, it's always nice to see it.
Yeah. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you. And so let me wrap up by thanking everyone for attending. Hope if you're having great weather like we are, I hope you're able to get outside this weekend and enjoy it. As I say, my final outdoor projects for the season will be completed this weekend, and then we'll be hunkering down and maybe even thinking of putting up seasonal decorations. Up here we call them Christmas decorations, and we'll be doing that. But in 2 weeks, we have our next show on the Workload Manager or the Adaptive Workload Manager with Dave Coleman from the IBM Toronto Lab. Please make sure you tune in for that. So let me cue the music and continue to thank Christian over and over again for a great show. And we will see you in 2 more weeks. Thanks again to everyone, and we'll see you next time on the Dbz Night Show.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Great. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.